another of the misperceptions that you highlighted in your article was kind of this remains of the day wastebasket theory. I have a dream and I think these are just kind of patterns that I'm living in my life that are being recycled in a dream.
Yeah, this is very common. We end up giving an explanation for a dream and we think that does it, and then we end up dismissing the dream. For instance, someone will dream of being in a circus, and they'll think, oh, I saw the circus on TV last Friday night. I'm sure that's why I dreamed it, and then they forget it. But if they, let's say, look into the details, they realize, well, this was not the same kind of circus, and yeah, what was happening in that circus dream? There was a lion, and it was handing me a message with its paw, and I got afraid and ran away. Now, suddenly you realize, wow, this is not exactly from the day, something left over from the day. If you think about all the things that we could dream of from the day before, it would be thousands and thousands of images and impressions, right? And you have to ask, why would the dream choose one or two, maybe from your day, to have in the dream? Why would it be so selective? And the truth is that most remembered dreams are not from events that happened in our life. They're like made up from elsewhere, right? People we don't even know are talking to us, celebrities coming to make love to us, to intrigue us, right? So it's a lot more than just fragments of the day somehow haphazardly being churned over in the night. There's a guiding intelligence that's orchestrating and, you might say, hand-choosing certain things from the day or even years before, and in a mix, using that to create a drama. Why? To teach you something.
So most people are kind of tempted to ignore any kind of dream interpretation at all because it's just, this is something that I've experienced in the last week, and it's just a repeat. There's nothing there. They don't see any intelligence.
They think that giving an explanation of why they dreamed it solves the matter.
I see.
You see. And then they don't ask that dangerous question. What does the dream want of me?
That is a dangerous, it seems dangerous.
It is dangerous to your familiar, you might even say your prideful way of living, that you know what's best and you know all that there is. And,
yeah. Just can dismiss.
Yeah.
So what about literalism? What is that misperception about?
Well, this, even still, when I dream of someone that I know, let's say a friend, even still, after really thousands of dreams and knowing better, there's a part of me that thinks the dream is telling me something about my friend. I remember years ago dreaming of one of my friends being dressed as the Pope. And I woke up from the dream, and the first thing I thought of, that's really like him. He does have a haughty, kind of know-it-all attitude that pontificates. Yeah, that's really true about him. And then I asked the dangerous question, but why would I be having a dream? And then I realized, oh my God, is that showing me something about how I can be? Can I pontificate like my friend? Well, I had to admit the terrible truth. Oh yeah, I can be quite easily fall into arrogance and know it all. So when I looked at the dream of my friend dressed as the Pope symbolically rather than the dream being literally about him, then it had information that convicted me and gave me a view of myself, you see. If you take a literal view of your dream, then you miss this symbolic message that's penetrating the truth of you, you see. So many people, they dream of their animals, their pet dog, and they think, oh, it's, you know, it's just about my dog that I love, or right, or especially if they've lost a beloved animal and it appears in their dream, then they think, oh, I'm just dreaming about my dog. I still, kind of like that first misconception we talked about, they're still wishing for, and so this is the way to have contact with their dog that they're still grieving. But what if the dream is using the dog to illustrate qualities that they need to be in touch with, you see? Like, well, what kind of dog was it that you dreamed of? Oh, it was a greyhound. Well, what are the qualities of a greyhound? Are they really fast and they're lean and they can just move so quickly? And then suddenly this person now has a definition of the qualities of greyhoundness, right? And they perhaps can see where those qualities of moving fast might be helpful for them, especially if they're reticent to move, if they're holding back, right? If they're putting things off, right? Maybe this quality of greyhoundedness would really complement their life and make them a lot more successful, you see. Suddenly the greyhound is symbolic of something, of qualities that would be useful to them. So this is a symbolic approach to dreaming, that everything that's in the dream has qualities, people, animal, things, even atmosphere and geography, that these all have qualities that are representing, you might say, human potentials.
So when I have a dream about another person, that it's not about that person or animal.
Well, there's another misconception. It's a dogmatic approach that says everything in your dream is about you. And it's always symbolic.
But it's not true.
Well, it seems that most dreams are symbolic and most dreams are about different aspects of you, right? In my experience. But there are those dreams that are more literal and that are actually showing us something about a friend, right? Or advising us to do something. I remember at a time in my life, I was terribly exhausted. And at the time I didn't realize it, but I had a bad case of adrenal exhaustion. Could not get to sleep. And when I got to sleep, I couldn't stay asleep long. Woke up tired and had a hard time getting through the first part of the day. And when I got home, I dreaded walking up the steps, 2 flights of steps. And I had this dream. And in this dream, there was about a 30-year-old, dark-skinned shaman woman with colorful clothing and wise. And maybe she was from the Caribbean. I don't know. But I could tell she knew more than me. And she had a picture of this colorful liquid that she poured into 4 vials in front of me. She filled them up, she set it down, and then she looked at me and said, I have everything I need but the tryptophan. And I woke up. And I said, tryptophan? What is tryptophan? This is years ago before I knew much about supplements. And so I read about tryptophan.
You didn't even know what that was?
I had no idea what it was. Wow. I knew that it was some kind of supplement. But what I soon realized when I took a good dose of it was that it enabled me to sleep remarkably well, which is the basis for curing adrenal exhaustion. You've got to rest. And because of this dream, I found my first footing out as a result of taking this dream, somewhat literally, right, by taking tryptophan. Now the question is what were these 4 vials and all of that? We won't talk about all that. But dynamic dream work, you see, does not make assumptions or dogmatisms about dreams are only this or that, but you're open to the symbolic meaning, you're open maybe that it's literal, right? I mean, I'm living in Austin now, here we are. The reason I'm in Austin is because I had 2 dreams clearly directing me that it would be good if I moved here. At the first dream, I did my best to interpret it symbolically, and I didn't even consider the city. 2 years later, I have another dream, and it promises me such good welfare if I would be in Austin. So I finally came and checked out the city, and here I am living here after a year, right? So you have to listen, right, intelligently and not make dogmatic assumptions.
It's not hard and fast. Some of them have literal meanings. Some of them point you there. It's interesting the way that to distinguish between the two.
Yeah, and in the book that I'm publishing, Your Dreams, 10 Best Friends, I describe ways to discern whether a dream is merely symbolic or should it be taken more literally. There are ways to decipher that.
Oh, okay. Interpretation is everything.
Oh, wow. Now this is a misconception that psychotherapists are very likely to make.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because it seems that understanding your dream is the purpose of working the dream, right? And once you have an interpretation, then you're done with the dream. I thought that when I started my dream work. I've been fortunate to have a remarkably gifted dream worker. And I quickly learned that dream figures, for instance, that were positive, that were inspiring for me, needed to be lived with, not only understood. Let's take my Volvo dream of the 10-year-old inner city kid, right? I had an interpretation pretty soon about what he was. You know, he was a part of me that was not allowed to be, could take risk, right? But then the challenge was, how do I become like him? So in my book, Your Dreams, 10 Best Friends, I talk about something called merging, where you learn how to let yourself become like someone else. You take on their characteristics, you see, and as a result, you begin to change your own personality. You actualize dormant potentials, and so over the weeks and months after this dream of the inner city kid, I had to imagine, what would he do? You know, this is my bumper sticker, not what would Jesus do, but what would he do is the question I would ask. Like when I'd find myself anxious in some situation, and this 10-year-old inner city kid would come to mind. Months after I had the dream, and I would consult him. I would feel and I would say, yeah, if he were here inside of me, what would he choose to do? You see? And so the image of him gave me access, you might say, to a dormant side of my personality. Well, this is the work of dreams. Interpretation is the first part of dream work, but then learning to live and merge with these images, oh my God, that's really where the gold is.
You need to practice.
Practice.
In waking life, the lessons of your dreams.
Yeah. and cultivate their presence inside of you. So this is, so important. For instance, people dream of celebrity figures, right? And they're often inspiring, and there's often love, or sometimes there is sexual involvement, which is a kind of merging, right? If you interpret these dreams literally, you say, oh, yeah, I have a crush on him or her or something. But if you approach a celebrity dream symbolically as containing attributes that could be good for you to develop inside of you, then the practice of the dream is to start being more like this celebrity. I remember a woman who dreamed of Brad Pitt just all the time, and she was kind of stuck at the literal level. And then when I began to offer the possibility that he may be used to reflect certain kind of masculine qualities that would be good for her to have in her life at work and in her dating, that she could actually benefit from having a little more of that Brad Pitt-like masculinity, right? All of a sudden, she had an assignment.
To practice being Brad Pitt.
To practice being like Brad.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So we've talked about literalism, and we've talked about symbolic interpretation. What about prophetic dreams? Do dreams tell you? You said your Volvo dreams initially, you thought maybe it was predicting an accident.
Right.
Does that ever happen?
I've never had an accident, and certainly not without. But you're asking, can dreams foretell the future? I believe that there are predictive dreams. However, I think they're few and far, and that most dreams are reflections about what's currently happening inside of us, right? And the lessons that we need to learn. But as I mentioned earlier, that there's danger in any kind of dogmatism. That dreaming intelligence has this ability to forecast the future, even warn us. I mean, I've had dreams that showed me if I continued on the path that I was on, things would not go well for me, right? So it didn't exactly predict the future, but it gave me a warning so that I could change my ways. And I think that's how dreams tend to help us.
So it's not necessarily, so if I were to dream that I won the lottery by choosing a certain set of numbers or something like that, that wouldn't necessarily be a prophetic, I should go buy a lottery ticket.
Well, that one's really hard, isn't it? I mean, I might be tempted to play those numbers if I could remember. But you know how funny dreams are. You can remember most of it, and you say, wow, what was that last number? Dreams seem to be about training us to make us more adapted, like it's a work of evolution, not something that wants to make life necessarily, easy for us. So, I don't know. If I had a lottery dream, I probably would play the numbers and also look at what it might be symbolic of.
Do both.
Yeah.
So dreams are not always literal, and they're not always symbolic. Some people make the mistake of assuming that they're always symbolic, right? We've talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, there is a danger. In Gestalt therapy, the tendency is to see everything in the dream as an aspect of you and only about you. I remember once I was thinking of taking a sabbatical. And I thought about Portugal for several reasons, but actually had my mind made up because I could live cheaper for several months in Asia, and already had my visa actually for a country in Asia. And then I had this dream one morning that changed everything. And it said, the weather in Portugal is the best in all of Europe for the next 2 months.
The dream.
End of dream.
Mm.
And I remember telling a colleague of mine who is a Gestalt therapist who said, well, you know, I believe everything in the dream is symbolic of something in you, so I would be careful to think of going to Portugal. And, you know, I think probably most of our dreams are symbolic, but there was something about that I couldn't give up on. And I felt that to be true to the dream, I had to interpret it more literal. And as it turned out, I changed plans. And the book, Your Dream's 10 Best Friends, was actually, the bones of it was written in Portugal. It was such an inspiring place for me to be. It was kind of dreamlike for me, the place that I stayed, and being in Europe. So.
How was the weather?
And it was the best in all of Europe. It was pristine. It was for 2 months. And then time was up.